Hi.
Hi there.
Again.
Again. All right. So I just first want to start off with, because something we talked about in the beginning was, being sure to capture what the teacher was wanting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you were able to capture what she asked for?
Yes, I do think that we were able to reflect on the engagement, the accuracy of the response, and the explicit instruction. We went through and we coded specifically for those things. And when we were having conversation about them, like we were able to kind of just like, I don't want to say disregard, but like put the color down for engagement, because everything that we noticed, like the conversations were on topic, they may not have reflected a complete demonstration of understanding those words at that point, but nothing was so off base on the engagement. So we kind of put that down, and we're able to focus on the explicit language that then supported the acquisition of the academic vocabulary and or the level of understanding for them. So I think in general, by the time we got done with our post-conference, our conversation had revolved around the explicit language, the student acquisition, and the next steps forward. So I think your question was, did I feel like I captured it? I feel like I did. I feel like we had a productive conversation.
Okay. Yeah, and how, because we did talk about this initially, it was a little bit of kind of our focus and what we talked about, but how to actually capture it. And how do you feel like, was that beneficial?
Oh, I see what you're saying,
How you captured it? And
that's...
maybe that was varying, but we talked about it as a little bit of a goal earlier.
Yeah.
Did it work for you in this manner?
You know, it did. I think it did, and I'd have to, like, I'm always willing and ready to try other ways. I don't think that we would have been able to dive into it the way we would have if I had tried to type it. I also think that I toggling and like maybe between two different columns and everything. So the pitfall here is not all the words were captured. There's just no way I could capture all the words. I think I got the essence of, I knew when I was listening, like for an engagement evidence and explicit instruction evidence, I didn't feel like anything that she said reflected like there was disappointment in the things that I captured. It would be really fantastic if we could mic everybody up and then it just like color coded responses,
right?
Like, and just like
it saves so much time.
Right. Yeah. Perfect, no.
Okay.
Hit what we were trying to achieve. I do think that we landed in a good spot from that.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if you want to just kind of go through.
Yes.
So I kind of like that was trying to capture how you led the conversation. I also have kind of some of her conversation to see like what maybe guided you and everything. So I think it was helpful just initiating with her feelings on the goals, just giving her a moment to share anything, and she did that, and then you guys jumped right into the coding part. And I will say
the coding actually took a lot longer than I thought it was going to, and I don't know why. I don't know. I'm trying to think like if I don't know. I know that I felt when I first started having her go through that maybe, not that she doesn't know what explicit instruction is, but that maybe like she was hesitant or didn't want to like over highlight something. And so then we started walking through it together.
Yes.
When my initial thought was that she could just take a minute to like highlight but that really slowed down our conversation, and not in a bad way. We had a good conversation around it, but it definitely contributed to slowing it down.
Well, and I think that's where being mindful of who you're working with, the skill set of the teacher. So I think it was good how you guys ended up walking through. I think I felt why maybe you walked her through too was just trying to read some of the writing, and obviously like mine, it's very quick, it's very messy, so helping to understand where we were. But I think to certain teachers, you're going to have to do it more with them. They might not feel comfortable. I think she felt comfortable and could have, like you initially planned.
The hieroglyphics.
But yes, just knowing, kind of, you know, some teachers could give them 5 minutes and code it, and others would want, you know, kind of like with our students, the you know, some gradual release there. So yeah, I feel like there was a fair amount of you talking in that beginning, but it was just reading your notes.
Yeah, and it really was chicken scratching for her. So.
Yeah. So I captured just, you know, how do you feel about this explicit statement? So yeah, I'm trying to figure out what my reading is too.
Samesies.
Asking positive. Oh, you were acknowledging. So something that we talked about is it's hard because we can't always as a coach give that specific like positive reinforcement. And so with this, I did feel you acknowledged something positive that the teacher did. You embraced using dismay after student response. So just acknowledging how she reacted it is a positive.
I'm wondering too, so like at this point, would this be more of collaborating? So when we're looking at the stances, facilitating, collaborating, consulting, would this be more, or does it not even fall into any of that?
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily collaborating. I mean, it was a way that you acknowledged what she did.
Can I write on this?
Yeah.
More contributed more to the relationship than...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where I think building, I know you guys have a relationship already, but in someone where you didn't, this could be very helpful. It would be that way of giving that little bit of positive feedback, but not great job. Right.
Or that was amazing.
Yes, it was very specific. And I don't know that I captured the specific response.
That's how I felt when she was going through my mind. This is great.
But somehow she just embraced with how they were using it. Okay. So acknowledging that. So you shared a lot, and I know it's because you had it scripted out, so that you focused on when you went to the pairs, what you shared, how they responded, possibly pausing and seeing what she heard from the students that she visited, and then just kind of comparing those experiences, how much support did she have to offer versus what you saw, just because then you shared what you saw, but you guys can just
right, and I'm
talk.
not there all the time.
So just giving the teacher a little bit more talk time. Specific
to these couple times when I had said that, or the whole time, do you think?
I think just leading up to this point, the 2 times that you got up and you went to that group like right in front of you on the floor, and then that table group, those 2 times specifically. Yeah. Because otherwise a lot of it was whole group where we were able to all hear it. She heard what students were saying and things like that. Okay. I think, you were giving some ideas and feedback, mentioning the different tiers of vocabulary, overarching ideas, kind of reinforcing.
So like for this right here, I believe I posed the question to her, like, how did that help extend or solidify the understanding of the word offered? And I feel like I made a very deliberate decision in that moment so that she was able to recognize, which I don't know if she had intentionally planned that or if it was just a happy outcome, but I wanted her to recognize that, what making that pivot did provide an opportunity for the kids to apply the word in a different way, which I do think was extraordinarily beneficial to their acquisition of the word.
Yes.
And so between these 2 things right here, I feel like here was where I was trying to push back on the reflection and get her to kind of name the action that then extended the acquisition of the word. And I mean, guide me on this or give me feedback on this, and then connecting it to the different tiers of the vocab is where I was trying to connect that to research-based practices and what we know about the different tiers of vocabulary. Okay.
You did throughout, I know I see it right here, but it makes me think like you did kind of stop and pause, like often did this contribute to an explicit instruction that was asked throughout several of the words. And so I'd say up to this point, it was a very guided conversation. I feel like you kind of guided it along, as we talked about a little bit ago. You were going to let her do it, and then you kind of went back and realized maybe we need to do it together. All right, so then that's when we transitioned to let's code the accuracy versus the engagement, and then realizing, okay, it might be easier to just engage when they're not, or code when they're not engaged, which, you know, I think that's just being reflective and quickly realizing, you know, we sometimes, as we record it, we have that idea and then going back and needing to switch. Let's see. This was just talking about Chrisangeli, kind of, you know, giving her, you acknowledge, you know, okay, you were giving her some confidence, trying to build her up. She had identified why she was doing that, and you just kind of reconfirmed that. And then you guys started going into some next steps, which is something that was talked about as a focus, where to go next, because you had pointed out they're not showing complete level of mastery. And you had mentioned looking for that better understanding, like what does that actually look like? And you know, the teacher's able to give some examples, the morphology. Yes, they're not using it grammatically, but it can be used in a correct manner. So you kind of posed, gave her a moment to start reflecting on that. I'm trying to think why. Okay, just it was great. You know, the teacher kind of brought this up. Did pacing begin to impact learning? So that was something you kind of had led that conversation, but you didn't actually have to pose it. Like you know, the conversation went there. Oh, you had her, I know, sorry. I'm trying to remember. You just had her mark it. Yes, because you were pointing out to her, which I thought was helpful. Like, so mark that down. Like, that's a good spot, because even if we went back and we looked at the coding and just how the lesson flowed again, you could kind of see, like, at what point, how many minutes were we in the lesson, how to make adjustments for in the future. So I think having her, like, she did acknowledge that, but you actually having her mark it and point that out. All right, so again, asking how do you feel they were in demonstrating the language. And I mean, just from notes here, I don't need to read all of them, but you know, you were able to pose that question and get quite a bit of response out of that. So I think,
I was just saying, because I feel like ultimately for teachers to pose this question on their own in reflection of lessons is the goal. So just kind of like almost just like putting a spark to the fire. Like she was very aware of where they were at in terms of understanding the words. But yeah, I just trying like that self-reflection and independent practice. Not that I don't think it's a part of this teacher at all, but you know what I mean? Just trying to pose the question in that way.
Yeah, well, you always want to be mindful of that and just automatically be thinking of, okay, what is my end goal? Are we there? Where in the process are we with it? So I think posing that instead of you pointing it out, sometimes, you know, because of time's sake, just different reasons, or, you know, we just kind of jump right to it. Well, here's what you could do. So, or I mean, here's, you know, where I felt they're at. Okay, and just again posing some open questions. You know, why is this going to be successful? How is that going to help your students? I know there was some conversation there. really kind of honing in on that level of mastery. I think you spent a good amount of time focusing on that, which was important. Yes, they have the basics, but what are next steps kind of leading to that? Making sure there were multiple ways to get to that level of application. Again, we have an experienced teacher, so she was able to come up with many ideas. As you know, as a coach, this is where, they very likely might turn to us at this point. They're like, well, I don't know. Like, what should I do next? But yeah, I don't know if you had the instructional handbook or, okay. So you had that ready, and, which is great. As a coach, we always want to have some type of a resource to refer them back to as well. Oh, I jumped ahead. We already talked about the reference, the instructional handbook. So then kind of you gave a moment, I think here, really clarifying what are the next steps.
And how that would look in terms of pacing and the things we had kind of unpacked.
Yes, yeah. It wasn't just an overarching, what is your next step? Okay, you're going to go and, do more with the vocabulary. It was, all right, let's clearly define it, which I think that's really helpful for teachers to, just kind of a step-by-step, not have too much to focus on. You guys ended up coming up with, I think, 2, the word squares and the definition and the matching. Yeah,
which that is a part of the word squares.
It would be. So
yes. So I think we just really focused in on the next couple of days moving forward and trying to extend their acquisition and application of those words. So.
And then talking about that, because I how to capture student conversation without me. And I know that,
and this came down to a time thing. Like, when I noticed we were at 47 minutes, I was like,
yes,
we gotta go.
Yes. I think that's where we realized, I think that's where we kind of all realized, we thought it was very narrowed in, coaching focused, but really, there are a few different avenues to go down here. So I think just putting that, on the table for next time is fine. And really, and that's what we're thinking about, what is immediate, even, what do we need to focus on this week? And then we can go forward. Just, with our struggling students, they need many things. What's the first thing? So I think helping her prioritize was beneficial, to not feel overwhelmed. So prioritize, let's just focus on basically the remainder of this week, and how that application process will look.
And I felt like in the vast amount of time that we spent coding my script for her, we were able to connect the explicit language that gave the kids opportunities to demonstrate their knowledge, through use in a sentence or scenario type of stuff, and her decision to use that explicit and direct instruction and language in that manner completely supported that. And then through our conversation and talking about the different levels of their understanding, I think that was almost what I didn't really anticipate happening, was what moving forward she can reflect on and say, okay, what am I choosing to be explicit about, and what is it fleshing out from them? I keep saying that, but is it asking them to use it as an example or put it in a sentence, or is it asking them to define it? And so I think we found a lot of validity in having them gain an understanding of those words through conversation today. But now that she moves the next couple days forward, I think that she, based on our conversation, is much more clearly aware that she wants to understand that they can define it on their own, define it in their writing, all the different ways that she demonstrated or suggested they could demonstrate it. Yeah.
And I think that's just looking at the different levels of their understanding and where they're at, and building and extending to that point.
Any other feedback for me as a coach and how I was a coach for her?
I think you definitely, let her speak, gave her some voice. gave guidance, but it was not like overpowering guidance. It was, you know, just small little guiding. Again, that acknowledging things that were correct, or I don't know if acknowledging, I'm trying to think of really how to best just.
I think acknowledging is better than validating, though. Do you know what I mean? Like they need to, any teacher needs to validate based on what they see based on student data.
Yeah.
But an acknowledgement maybe of a pivot that was important in
and led to their student success. So you know, acknowledging that this was done and why it was done. And sometimes, you know, you stopped and you asked why this was done. She was able to explain and it made sense, and you were able to, you know, then discuss, okay, well, now how will we move forward from that? So I think really just kind of listening and, you know, kind of just giving guidance as needed was helpful.
So I think moving forward for me, my goals with this specific teacher who I have a great working relationship with, and she's obviously very skilled, is to continue being a coach that like pivots as she needs, as both a collaborator and a facilitator, as needed. I think one time where I really felt she's so talented that I almost felt like I wasn't even really contributing that much other than writing down the things for her to reflect on, which she would have done anyways. But just being that other, like, you know, wall to bounce things off of, for example, with the depth of understanding the meaning of the word. But I think with this teacher specifically, I don't think that a consulting stance is necessary. I think that facilitating and collaboration moving forward, and then extending the what are the next steps into, okay, well, on the days where it is just a conversation-based type of immersion, how are we tracking that to then plan your best next steps forward. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know.
That was great.